Hi everybody, welcome to the Canada Agriculture and Food Museum Google Hangout on air. This is a family hangout and we're here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada at the Agriculture and Food Museum. And today we're going to talk about something pretty special. We're going to talk about sheep and what they do at night. Now here, if you can tell, I'm in an office at the museum. It's not quite night yet, but we have with us Nadine in the barns, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what the sheep do here and what we can learn from them. Later on, we're going to do a little bit of a craft with Nadine as well. But to begin with, we're going to show you some real sheep. And live, we're going to go to Nadine right now. Nadine, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, so I switched the camera over to you, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, so here we are in the sheep barn with, of course, the sheep, but also the goats. But tonight, we're mostly going to talk about sheep. Now, spring is a very, very special time of the year for the sheep because there's two things that happen that don't happen the rest of the year usually. So, for one thing, if you have a quick look around, you're going to see that we have a lot of lambs. And that's because the lambs are born only in the spring, either end of winter or early spring, and that's because sheep are seasonal breeders. And the reason why the lambs are born at the end of the winter, early spring is because when they're born, they don't need to eat grass and hay and grains. They only need their mother's milk. So it does not matter if there's snow covering the ground. All they need is the milk. And by the time the grass starts growing, they're old enough to start to nibble on it. That way, the lambs can grow all spring and summer and fatten up for the winter and, well, tough it out the next cold winter. The other reason why spring is important for sheep is because it's time for them to lose their winter coat. Now, I don't know how warm it is at your place, but here in Ottawa, it was pretty warm today, and I'm very happy I am not wearing my winter coat. But if you look at our sheep, you can see that they still have all their wool. And we can even see how thick it is. Look at this. Now all my hands are oily because they're covered with lanolin. And that's a special oil that the sheep produce on their skin. And it goes everywhere on the wool, and it protects the sheep from the rain. That way, even though it may be standing in pouring rain, its skin won't ever be wet. So it can stay warm. But right now, it does not need all this wool. It's too hot. So in 3 weeks from now, during our sheep shearing festival, we are going to cut the wool off. Now, to do that, we are going to need a shearer. So our shearer, Ross, will come to the farm, and he's going to shear all of the adult sheep because the babies, as you can tell, they don't have much wool yet. And to do that, all he has to do is, sit the sheep on its rump, and that way it can't run away. It's easy for us to handle the sheep. Now, he's going to use a special tool called shears. It's a bit like a gigantic clipper that the barber uses, and he's going to use the clipper to remove all of the wool. Now, you can imagine he might actually have to shear hundreds of sheep that spring, so it has to be tough to cut through the thick wool and the oil. So he's going to remove the entire fleece, and at the same time, he's going to give the sheep a manicure. Now, it's the right time. I mean, the four legs are up in the air, and you can see the nails. Now, this is a lamb, so the nails, the hooves are very, very short. But as they get older, the hooves are just like her nails. They just keep on growing and growing, and some of it wears off. But after a while, it can actually cause pain and also damage the sheep's legs. So that way, since he walks on his hooves, his nail, we make sure that it's safe and that he stays healthy. All right. So why do we keep sheep in Canada? Now, you might think it's because we just talked that we're going to shear the sheep. But actually, most sheep are bred for meat. Now, you might be surprised to learn that the entire fleece of one sheep, so say I remove all the wool from this big sheep, it's only worth a few bucks. So, and believe me, it costs much more to hire someone to shear the sheep, the shearer. So whenever we shear the sheep, we actually lose money. There's not much money to be made with wool. Now, there are some farmers who specialize in, and they actually keep special breeds of sheep that make very nice, long, soft wool, but that's not the case with our sheep here. All the sheep we have are meat breeds. But there's another reason why we might actually keep sheep, and it would be for milk. And you might be surprised to learn that there are a few sheep dairy farms across the country, and they milk the sheep once or twice a day in order to make, it could be cheese, yogurt, ice cream, and what's particular about sheep milk is you can actually freeze it and use it later. So you don't have to make cheese right away. It won't lose its property. You can't do that with the other types of milk. Now, I believe we're pretty much done in the barn. I was wondering if anyone would have questions, or are we moving to the craft?
So actually, I forgot to mention, so I'm just going to go back to my screen here, and I forgot to mention that if you do have any questions, people watching at home, you can use the Q&A app on Google, and so I'm watching that. So if you have a question, you can type it in, and then I will be reading them, and I'll ask those questions to Nedzin, and she'll answer any questions that you ask, so feel free to do that whenever until the end of the Hangout, so probably we have about 10-15 more minutes left for you to get those in. Also on Twitter, I'll be watching the hashtag AskAgMuseum. So AskAg Museum. I'm monitoring that hashtag, so if you're watching with us on YouTube, I'll answer your questions that way, or I'll ask your questions to Nedzin, and I'm watching those. So right now, Nedzin, we don't have any more. We don't have any questions yet. So what I'm going to do, as I think Nedzin is going to get set up for her craft in another room, I'm going to show you folks at home some of the things that we can do online. So if you're not in Ottawa here, hopefully my screen share is working, but in Ottawa, so if you are in Ottawa, we've got a very nice, the Sheep Shearing Festival, like Nedzin was talking about, is coming up very soon, so on May 16th and 17th. So over the weekend, you can see all of those sheep shearers come in and do some really cool things. So you've got online, you can check that out if you're in Ottawa. If you're not in Ottawa, but you're still looking to do some kind of cool experiments or learn a little bit more about sheep and the wool, you can check out also, we have some activities online. So this is called an educational activity kit, and it talks a little bit about natural fibers and wool and some of the sheep that we have here. So it's actually an activity kit. It's meant for schools, but there's some pretty cool activities. If you're at home and want to do them, you can download this. I won't download the whole thing. It seems like it might ruin my connection here, but you can download the activity. So if you are a teacher, download it for your class, or if you're at home watching, download it and learn a little bit more about the sheep that we have here. So I'm going to stop my screen share. I think that this will, good. So hopefully you guys saw that screen, because now I'm thinking maybe it wasn't as obvious, but you can check out the website. It's cafemuseum.technoscience.ca, and all of those resources we have in French and in English, and so our French Hangout is coming up next. And it looks to me like we don't have any questions. Let me just check on Twitter quickly, but Nedzin looks like she's getting set up in her area there, and she's going to teach us a craft that you can do with wool. So Nedzin, we've got the camera back on you now, and we'll let you go ahead and explain. You're a little bit farther away, you're a little bit blurrier, so maybe
okay, so let's get a little closer.
Perfect.
Better?
That's better.
All right.
Thanks.
Now, there's a lot of things we can do with felt. We can make clothing, houses if you lived in Mongolia, New York, but we're not going to build that today. Today we're going to learn of how to make a felted soap. Now, this is just a handmade natural soap. You could actually use any type of soap you wanted. And what I have here are different colors, two colors of wool. And what you need is you need to buy wool that has been carded, so that has been brushed. It doesn't have to be nice wool. Actually, if it's not too nice, if it's not merino but a coarser type of wool, it will actually felt better. So it's going to be easier to make the felted soap. Now, if I were to look at wool with a microscope, I would see tiny little scales everywhere on the strings. And that actually is the reason why wool is so itchy. It's those tiny little scales that just keep on rubbing and rubbing your skin, and that cause irritation. The trick with wool is that if you want to make felt, you need to do a few things. First, you need to wet the wool. Once it's wet, all the little scales will open up. Then you need warmth and friction, and just the rubbing will mix all the little strings, all the little fibers together. And after that, when it dries up, the scales are going to close again. And that's what makes felt. It's just like really tangled up wool fiber. And because it dries that way with the scales closing, you can't undo it. It's impossible to turn fiber into wool again. So in order to make our soap, all we need to do is take a piece of soap and you cover it with the felt. And what's important is you don't want to put the felt all in the same direction. You want it to cross over all the time, and that way it's going to, well, tangle up felt better. It's going to be easier and more sturdy. And one of the advantages of making a felted soap is after that, you can, wash yourself or your hands. It's a bit like using a cloth, but instead you're using your felt. And the more that you wash yourself, the more it's going to felt. So it's like kind of an ongoing craft project. So here it is. So I've covered it a few times here.
Nadine, did you just use any soap that you had? What was the type of soap you used? Was it special?
No, that one was just like a handmade soap. One that does not lather too much is better, but any soap would work. I mean, I would suggest if you pick a soap that, that you like, because the bar is going to last pretty much forever. Well, not forever, but for a very long time. And when you're done, when the bar is too small, you can actually cut the felt, put a new bar in, just, rub the end, and it's going to close up again. And that way you can reuse your felt a few times. So, well, let's just go like, no, it doesn't work that way. Here. So you need a small string or a piece of yarn, and you just to tie up the felt, the wool first, and it's actually all going to felt together. And then all we need is warm water. Usually when you're making felt, you need soap, but hey, we have soap, and all we need to do is wet it and rub it like this. And it actually takes a while. It should take, I don't know, a good 10-15 minutes. And the more you rub, the more sturdy and well felted the wool will be.
And Nadine, as you use this, like you said, it just keeps getting better, right?
Yeah. The more you use it, it really does become like a piece of cloth. Like it's super, super tight. At first it's a little loose, and if you don't put enough felt, you're going to feel the soap. So you might actually have to add more layers if that happens.
That seems like a very cool craft that people can do at home for not a lot of money. So maybe they even have the materials lying around already, and then they can try this.
Yeah, and actually most craft stores will sell wool that you can use for felting, or the knitting stores. So it's fairly easy to find.
That's excellent. Thanks very much, Nadine. Is that the last step in your craft?
Pardon me?
Is that the last step in the craft?
Yeah, that would be it. You just, once it's done, all you have to do is let it dry. and then you can use it. But I suggest that you don't leave your soap in the bath because it will eventually disappear.
That's great. Thank you so much. I was wondering, so we don't have any questions here, but I was wondering, because I think maybe some people have joined a little late, I wonder if we could head back to the barn right now if you wanted to go and maybe show some of the lambs that were born this year. Or maybe we can keep your camera on while you're walking over there, because I know you're really close to the barn. And
Yeah.
we can just see sort of what else is in the building that you're in. So we're sort of after hours at the museum here. So Nadzin is walking through our small animal barn, and this is the corridor to get to the sheep. And so we have a sort of the barn with the sheep. On the other side we have the pigs, which is maybe for another hangout. But this one, we've had a few births over the spring, and I think Nadzin probably has a little bit more info on that. But you saw she was working with some smaller sheep there. Some lambs,
Yeah.
I guess they're called.
They're so cute. Look at that. He comes and says hello. Both of them.
And
I'm
it's
pretty sure these two. Pardon me?
Do they have names? Do we give them names?
No, we don't give them names. All they get to have is a nice fancy tag, or it's almost like wearing an earring. And that there's a number on it, and when we go back to our registration logbook, we can tell like who's the mother, who's the father. You might actually have noticed that if you look at most of our sheep, they're white, yet all the lambs have some black, and that's because we had a different ram last fall, and it was a Dorper. It was a breed of ram that had I believe a white body and black head, white body, or vice versa. I can't remember. But that would explain why they all look like miniature Holstein cows.
Well, they're very cute. And maybe actually if you could ask Stephen so Stephen's our cameraman, so if you could ask him to just sort of hold tight on one of these, maybe we can get a nice view of their face.
Yeah, Stephen, could you focus on one of them in particular? Actually, I can grab one, and that way we can bring it real close to the camera. They're a little heavy, so I won't. So here it is.
Oh, there he is, and you can see the tuft of white on his face. That's very nice. Thanks very much. So we don't have any questions, but for those of you who might want to stay tuned, we have a French presentation coming up, or if you're watching later on YouTube, you can feel free to ask them. So Nadzin, I'll say goodbye from here. So thank you everybody for joining us for the Hangout at the Canada Agriculture and Food Museum. We hope that if you're in Ottawa, you get a chance to come visit the museum either in the month of May for sheep shearing or at another time during the year to see all of the fantastic other animals that we have here, and some of our exhibits on tractors and bees. Lots of stuff going on, and we hope that we see you soon. Thanks. Bye.